Welcome to the general briefing for the X-Lakes and the LCC for 2026. This is just a general briefing about the Grasmere Valley and Grasmere Sports ground in particular. There will be much more detailed weather and safety and competition briefings that will be on the Thursday night, on the Thursday evening, and you'll be getting a different brief depending on exactly which event you're doing. So the Lakes Charity Classic people, the coaching group, the X-Lakes Hike and Flyers, the Free Flyers, etc. You'll all get different detailed briefings depending on the tasks that you're set. So this briefing is being sent out to all the 260 pilots coming, plus it's CC'd to the membership of the Cumber Soaring Club for interest, so they can see what we're doing, although lots of people are in both camps. Before I do the detailed run through of all the safety information and so on, the first thing I wanted to say is just why we do these competitions every year, why we hold them. I mean, there's a historic reason, which is that the LCC is the oldest competition in the UK that's been continuously held, and it's important to keep it going. But the reason really is it's effectively like the coaching groups that are organised by the club too, in that what we're trying to do is to create opportunities for gaggle flying, if that makes sense. It's obviously exciting to try and get on the podium or whatever, but the purpose really, I think, is to try and create opportunities where a large group of pilots all go out and they try and do the same task. So whether that is flying a cross-country route or a hike and fly challenge, or even just soaring the hill, we're trying to find opportunities where we can all go out and do the same thing together, because inevitably some people will make better decisions, and we can learn a lot from paying attention to the pilots who do the best at any given task. So that's the idea, is we want to create big gaggles of pilots going out together doing the same task and seeing who makes the best decisions. It's also fun and social to get everyone together, but really that's the fundamental idea. It's a way of bringing people together and helping us improve as pilots by paying attention to the people who solve a problem in the best or the most efficient way. First, admin. You will have been sent details of the Telegram group. Please join the Telegram group. If you don't know what I'm talking about and you're not in the LCC Telegram group, then pause this video, stop what you're doing, check your email, join the LCC and X-Lakes Telegram groups, please. I think details are also on Air Tribune, but it doesn't matter, it'll be in the email that you were sent. It's really important that you're in that Telegram group, because all of the important or emergency information that we need to send out to pilots will be put into that Telegram group. And I will just assume, and the race directors will just assume, that you are in that group and that you're reading it. So please join the Telegram group, it's super important. We're also using PureTrack this year to monitor where people have got to. So please download PureTrack and make sure it's working. It's important for PureTrack that you put your name, your full name, not just Bob or Paul or Dave, but your surname as well, instead of a number. PureTrack sometimes presents just as a number. Obviously we can't tell who that is. So please download PureTrack and make sure it's set up correctly with your instruments, with your full name in it, so that we can see who's flying around and where you are. We're also asking this year for all pilots to have a buddy system. So hopefully you're coming to the event with someone who can be your buddy, or perhaps there's a small group, 3 or 4 of you. If you don't have a buddy, then at the briefing on the Thursday night, Thursday the 18th of June, we will find those people and then pair them up. And the purpose of the buddy system is so that every evening we want to know that everyone's home safe. And the easiest way to do that with a large group of people who don't really know everyone in the group is to make sure that you're just checking on your friends and they're checking on you, so that we can find out quickly if someone hasn't come back in the evening. There will also be a sign-in and sign-out board for people who are free flying or people who are taking part in competitions. I can't make you use that, but if you don't use it, I have much less information about where and when you've gone out flying and when you've come back. And the idea with the sign out board is, in the morning when you leave the field, you write your name on the board if you're going out flying, and then when you're back in the evening safely, you wipe your name off the board. So at the end of the night, I can look at the board and quickly see are there any names that haven't been rubbed out. That's the idea. So again, what we're trying to do is to make sure that we have some kind of a system so that we know that everyone who's gone out flying has come back safely to the campsite in the evening. Okay, second, let's move on to the Grasmere Valley in general. Here I am in the Grasmere Valley. I'm in Dunmore Raise at the top here, but if you look down, you can see that Grasmere is a big bowl. It's a big bowl with quite gently rolling hills all the way around. Down here, towards sort of on the east side of the valley, is the beginnings of the Helvellyn Ridge, and behind the show field is probably the best site in Grasmere, which is Heron Pike. Heron Pike really also includes Olcock Tarn, Nabscar, and further up Great Rig, in kind of a little series of ridges and peaks, all of which are effectively one huge site that takes wind with some kind of west in it, so southwest or northwest or whatever, and that runs all the way up as far as Clough Head. And flying that ridge, the Helvellyn Ridge, is known locally as the Milk Run. It can be done in either direction, starting at Heron Pike going north, or starting at Clough Head normally in the north and flying south. So if we have the right wind conditions, the one thing I would encourage you to do is to fly that ridge if you haven't done it before. If you're a pilot rated, if you're a club pilot, obviously you're not insured to go cross country, so please just stay on the sites locally. Grasmere, as you can tell from looking at it, has quite a lot of green open fields, and obviously in an emergency you should land anywhere that it's safe to do so. But you can see, hopefully by looking, that the trees tend to be bounded, the fields tend to be bounded by stone walls, dry stone walls, and trees, big mature trees. And there's quite a lot of forested areas too in the valley. You can't see it from here necessarily, but you'll also find that road that runs up the middle of the valley is the A591. That's the main road through the middle of the Lake District, and on the eastern side of that, underneath this ridge here, there are quite a lot of telegraph wires and poles going up to the houses and farms and so on that run all the way down that side of the valley. But on the middle of the valley, the flatter area of the valley, there are no telegraph poles at all. So generally, if you're in a situation where you really just have to land, pick a field in the middle of the valley, I would suggest, because you're going to be less likely to come across telegraph poles and telephone wires and things. However, in general, it would help me and my relationships with the farmers and the landowners in this valley if you would avoid just randomly landing in any field. It's not helpful. If you have time and it's safe to do so, I would really encourage you to always try to land at our designated landing zone in Grasmere Sports Field. We have a big corner of the field, several acres, that we leave over as a designated landing zone, and most of the time you should be aiming to land there if you're landing in Grasmere. There are a couple of other emergency places if you're bombing out. One of them is this. This is Dunmore Raise. There's a very boggy bit over there and rocky. I don't particularly recommend you land there. But if you are coming down, losing altitude, this is another good option for landing. As you can tell looking around, it's very grassy, it's quite flat, there's very little rocks. This is another good option. And there's some others in the written briefing that I will send out to everyone. It's very important to me that you don't climb over dry stone walls. If you do come down in the wrong field or whatever, please do not climb over dry stone walls or fences. The farmers loathe it. rightly so. It really irritates them. Often the walls can get damaged by people climbing over them. Just use the gates if you have to. And there are also several fields, big fields, that have a public right-of-way running through the middle. These are also good options for emergency landings. The two that come to mind, one of them is opposite the Travellers Rest pub. There's a public right-of-way running down the edge of it. And the other one is just north of the sports field. There's another very large field that has a public right-of-way running right down the middle of it. And you can see these from the air really obviously. So if you're not quite got the glide to get to the sports field, then look for those two fields, or Dunmore Raise here itself, because if you land on a public right-of-way, you can pack up and just walk out on the footpath without disturbing anyone's farming business. And also the farmers will stock those fields appropriately for pedestrians being in those fields, so there won't be lots of angry cattle, for example. And so generally you're better off landing somewhere where there's a public right-of-way. I would really encourage you to do that. Grasmere is very sunny today. It's not always this sunny. Grasmere is not generally a place where you would sort of come on holiday flying, if I can put it like that. The sunshine is not reliable here. You have to be quite enthusiastic to enjoy flying here. The weather is variable and there are many narrow valleys. The main valley here is very predictable, but it has lots of little offshoots, little narrow valleys where the wind can accelerate significantly, and in some of those we recommend only flying if you're an experienced cross-country pilot. I've got a detailed map in the written briefing that you can refer to. In essence, what that says is that if you're not sure whether it's safe to fly somewhere or not, then stick to the big open valleys, the windward faces of the main ridge, and generally that's the safest air that you could fly in. I should tell you I live here. I love flying in Grasmere because I don't particularly, pilots are lazy. I don't particularly want to get in the car, and so I fly here all the time. 95% of my flying really is in Grasmere, and so I generally don't really fly anywhere else. Perhaps if it's northwesterly, I'll drive to Clough Head at the other end of the ridge to come down the ridge. And if it's northeasterly, I would drive to Carrick, which is a really good site, sort of in the North Lakes for northeasterly. But other than that, Grasmere can supply you with a site for every wind direction, really. And so most of the time, I'm just flying here. Another risk to talk about is jets. The RAF use this valley, like lots of valleys in the Lake District, for training low-flying military jets and other aircraft. And generally the route that they take, they mostly only fly Mondays to Fridays, not at the weekend. And they mostly fly at 500 feet above ground level, kind of up the middle of the valley. So they come generally, not always, but generally, they come over Rydal Water, over Grasmere Lake to the island. They turn at the island, they fly over the church in the middle of the village, and then up here, and they would be 500 feet above my head now, coming through Dunmore Raise. They tend to avoid the ridges and the terrain, and that's most of the time where we want to be. We want to be on the ridge or in the terrain, and so most of the time it's a risk that you need to be aware of, but you're unlikely to suddenly be hit by a jet. But if you are flying here outside of the Lakes Charity Classic, it's good practice to use the Civil Aviation Notification Procedure, the CAMP, and to create a NOTAM to warn the RAF that you're going to be flying here. It really is good practice to do that even on the weekend, I would suggest. And they're very reasonable, and you can have quite useful conversations with the pilots doing the training. They'll normally ring you if you put in a CAMP for Grasmere. But on the right day, Grasmere does have some excellent flying, most notably the Milk Run, if you start at Clough Head and fly south down the Helvellyn Ridge. This is a classic route. I think first flown on a paraglider, it's flown on a hang glider. Ed Cleesby did a really good talk at the last AGM about the early flights that were done on hang gliders down the Milk Run, and they used to start further north, I think, and then carry on through Grasmere and then go further south. But it was first flown on a paraglider, I believe, by Mike Kavanagh in 1997, and he flew it as an out and return, starting just on a little crag just north of Clough Head, coming down the ridge, sort of approximately to the Grasmere Valley, and then turning around and going back. So the Milk Run is an absolutely classic route and a gentle introduction to cross country. And it forces, the interesting thing about it is it forces a pilot to thermal high for safety. So most of the ridge can be done with ridge soaring, but there is this central problem of the topography of the Helvellyn Massif. And below that there is a forest for about 4 or 5 miles or something, where around the Thirlmere Reservoir, and that is completely unlandable. So you have to get high to be safe and to cross safely. You can kind of do it almost with one major thermal, I would suggest, and just scratch the rest of it. And when you do that, flying down from Clough Head, you arrive at the Grasmere Valley like a huge relief. It kind of opens up before you like an enormous relief. But once you are here, you may find that Grasmere includes some enjoyable flying in its own right. In particular, as I've said, the west face of Heron Pike, flying along the ridge to Fairfield. The south face of Seat Sandal is also thermic in reliable places, as is Great Rig, the bowl below Great Rig, and Stone Arthur. And on a warm evening, the southwest cliffs of Steel Fell, for example, are soarable. And in the morning, the easterly cliffs of Silverhowe are good thermal triggers too. And we have several house thermals here in the valley. The Lake District is like the Alps in that the thermals don't move. You know, they're always in kind of the same place, and once you learn where they are, that's quite useful for moving around. However, as I've said, as well as these kind of lovely places with reliable lift, we also have in Grasmere narrow valleys that you should avoid in strong wind because they are dangerous, and the wind gradient is you know, an experienced cross-country pilot will understand all of this anyway, but for the people who are just used to flying at the coast, or perhaps the lower airtime pilots, you need to be really aware of the wind gradient here in Grasmere. We have very narrow valleys that accelerate the air significantly above the met wind or the background wind. We also have lots of terrain features, things like cols and spineback ridges and so on, which also create quite unpredictable air. The two main areas that I want to highlight as dangerous places to fly that you should be very cautious about. The first is the Easdale Valley, which is a little subsidiary valley of Grasmere. Easdale is very complicated. There's a lot of spineback ridges and narrow valleys and things, and unless it's a very, very low wind day, like a nil wind, high pressure blue day, you should not be flying in there unless you're an experienced cross-country pilot and you know the score. The other place that you really should be very cautious about flying is Grisdale Tarn. Grisdale Tarn is in a hanging bowl beneath Seat Sandal, Fairfield and Dollywagon Pike. It's on the Helvellyn Ridge, and it is avoidable when you're flying the Milk Run by coming round onto the west face of Seat Sandal. That's the safe way to do it. And there's a good article on the Milk Run that was put together by some pilots quite a long time ago. It's on the knowledge base section of the website that talks about this phenomenon, basically of not wanting to be too low in Grisdale Tarn. Basically, the Grisdale Tarn area is an area where the Grasmere Valley, the Thirlmere Valley and the Ullswater Valley are all meeting, and so as well as strong lift and strong climbs, there's also very complicated or unpredictable air systems setting themselves up there that can change very quickly. And so the general advice is to just not fly in there at all, again, unless it's a very low wind day, a safe day. So personally, the way that I mostly fly in Grasmere is I enjoy flying along the geographic features. We don't really fly most days, sort of downwind cross country here generally, because the hills are in the way. So most of the time in the Lake District, of course, there are some days when you can get very high above the terrain, and then it is more possible to think about, downwind cross country. But on more normal days, you're soaring the hill in the Lake District, and Grasmere is a good example of that. You will also find, flying in Grasmere, that you need to be competent. If you want to top land, you will need to be good at slope landing in hard mountain conditions, meaning being able to tuck into a precise landing area. There are rocks and bracken and dry stone walls and trees just all over the place, and so that actually the number of forgiving sites for top landing in Grasmere is quite limited, but they do exist. And so if you want to be able to top land when it switches off for a bit, to save your altitude, it is possible, but only in the right places. Heron Pike is one of them, actually, where a top landing is possible. But as you come up the ridge, it gets progressively less and less possible until you get to Seat Sandal, which again is top landable. Okay, now competition tasks. The LCC tasks will be set by the competition officials, Richard Bungay and his volunteers who are helping him, who are normally very experienced pilots and instructors from the club. This is a pure cross-country competition where just the flying counts. The X-Lakes, by contrast, is a hike and fly competition. So you're allowed to land and continue on foot. And for that reason, it takes place in all weathers. So if we have inclement weather, it's possible that the race directors will issue a no-fly instruction. The X-Lakes will take place anyway, because you can, hike and fly. You could just hike for the X-Lakes. It's possible that John Westall, the X-Lakes race director, will alter the course by changing the cylinder sizes of the turn points if the weather is looking pretty bad. But that's a decision he's going to make much closer to the time. Within the X-Lakes itself, there are two categories of competition. There's the one-day task and there's the two-day task. The two-day is a race to goal following the Bob Graham round. This is a technical and difficult course where just finishing will be an achievement. It really is a mega course when you look at it. I think on Air Tribune, John has put a downloadable example of what the task might look like for people to study and to start planning. But that's the two-day, and that's a race to goal. You have to tag every turn point and then get back in over the finish line in Grasmere. For this, you should study two track logs very carefully, I suggest. The first is a high cloud-based circuit flown by John Westall and Bud Patterson a few years ago. I'll link to it in the written briefing. In this was a task set by Ed Cleesby originally, which was to fly the Bob Graham, and they did the whole thing, I think, in 6 and a bit hours on a very thermic day with a high cloud base. The other track log that you should study is the run and fly version of the Bob Graham done by Tom Hodgkin, I think in 2024. He's made a video about that, and again I'll link to that in the race briefing notes. He did it, I think, in 16 and a half hours or thereabouts. Both attempts, both the sort of pure cross-country version and the run and fly version, managed the Bob Graham round in less than a day, and they show how to approach this task in different weather conditions. So on the right day it can be done, but obviously on the wrong day it will be much harder, and in particular I suggest that on a very strong wind day where you really aren't confident to fly, I think it would be extraordinarily hard, just extraordinarily hard. But I think that we will see as we get close to the time. Also, we don't yet know the precise size of the cylinders, and the cylinder size for that task really will determine how far you have to go into Westall, for example, and that sort of thing. Then there's the one-day task, which is personally it's what I compete in, and it's my favourite. It's Wainwright bagging. So this is a task where you have to tag the summits of fells, and they have different points. So Wainwrights that are considered to be easily reachable from Grasmere are worth 10 points, and Wainwrights that are further away and are less easily reachable are worth 20 points. And you have normally about 8 hours to leave Grasmere, go out, tag some summits, do a big circle or a triangle, and then come back and get back to goal within the time that you have. I think of this, the one-day task is really more of a relaxed effort for weekend warriors, ordinary pilots, leisure pilots, hill walkers who enjoy peak bashing. It's my own personal favourite. I think of it really as a series of transition problems for crossing valleys, where you also have to be quite a good navigator. I mean, there is Jack Sewell's incredible record for the one-day task set a few years ago, where I think he got something like 53 Wainwrights in 8 hours, because it was a very high cloud-based day, and he just did a phenomenal flight. It's a really good flight. I think it might still be on half track, so it's worth going to have a look at that. But on a normal year, you seem to need about 300 points or something to get on the podium, and for that it is probably essential that you go out and get some 20 pointers. And you can see the map on the X-Lakes website. There's some 20 pointers in dense concentrations over in the High Street Ridge to the east. There's also quite a lot down near the Old Man of Coniston to the south, and then over to the west there's quite a lot around the Central Fells, the Gables, Bowfell, Scarfell Pike, that kind of area. Grasmere flying in general, there are sort of 3 types of flying that I do here. And I would say the number 1 would be thermic days. Not enough of them, sadly, but thermic days, and it's often thermic here from about 11:30 in the morning through to, I mean, it depends on the day, but it can go right into the evening. So a thermic day is a great day in Grasmere. This is a thermic valley. Then there's high wind soaring on the terrain. Very possible here, but normally you can't get away from the hill in those circumstances. And then the third type of flying that goes on here is like a hike and fly mission on a low wind day generally. So, and often you can take off from taller peaks or areas of the valley that are otherwise inaccessible on stronger wind days. So a good example is Fairfield. There's a great hike and fly adventure from Grasmere Sports Field where you walk up Fairfield. That should take you about 2 hours, and then fly back. That's a good thing. If it's a really like a nil wind day, that's a great little adventure to have without ever having to get in the car. The most dangerous of all of these types of flying is high wind soaring, where a wind gradient on a strong day might suck you into a layer of venturi and blow you over the back. The same can happen in narrow valleys or a windy gap. You really must take care. Wind is a killer here, or pilots have died in the Lake District from rotor behind sharp crags in narrow valleys, and you must take care, if there's strong wind, to fly a safe line. It's very important that. The most important thing I think about flying in Grasmere is to try and be sensible and to give yourself a safety margin. This is a friendly social club event. It is a competition. It is important that people try hard, but please do not allow the animal spirits of the competition to tempt you into harm's way or making a decision that you otherwise would regret. Generally, and I would say this especially for strong wind, just because you see other pilots flying in strong wind doesn't mean that you should. You should get to take off and then make your own mind up. If you get to take off and it's too strong, and you think to yourself, if you were on your own, you probably wouldn't fly, then listen to that instinct. You've got to make your own mind up. Just because other people are flying doesn't mean that you must. The goal of this event is to raise money for local charities and also for our club, the Cumbria Soaring Club. We are enthusiastic amateurs, not professionals. So if there is something that could be improved about this event, please ask yourself, will you do it? Right? This is kind of a point that I make to everyone repetitively, so please forgive me if you've heard this before, but we're all volunteers and we rely on each other to be a good community. If there's something that you think could be done better about this event, then don't just tell me. Offer to help solve the problem. I will be a very much warmer and more receptive audience, I promise you that. We also have 2 excellent shops nearby that you can visit, which is the Sick and the Wrong in Keswick, which everyone will know, and also UK Air Sports, which everyone should know too, in Threlkeld. Both of those shops can help you with introductions to local BHPA reserve repack sort of systems, or individuals who do reserve repacking, also reserve system checks, checking the system is all corrected properly. Finally, let me just talk briefly about the rules of the campsite and the landing zone. So please do not camp on the edge of the landing zone or loiter there. This is obviously irritating. There's 14 acres of field to camp in, so pick somewhere away from the landing zone, please. It would really help me. If I do see anyone camping on the edge of the landing zone, I'm just going to ask you to move anyway. So please make a sensible decision and park somewhere not on the edge of the landing zone. When you do land in Grasmere Sports Field, please ball up your wing immediately and move to the edges of the field to make space for other pilots. You've got to be considerate about this. It is a big landing area, but we also have a lot of pilots coming, and whilst there are alternative landing areas, and of course on some days the competitions will be somewhere else, possibly depending on the wind direction and where the comps decide that they're going, in particular for the LCC and the coaching group or whatever. But nevertheless, there's going to be a lot of pilots all trying to land in the same place. So please, when you land, ball up your wing immediately and move to the edges. Please also try and make conservative decisions when you're landing. There are trees on the edge of the landing field, so it's sensible to not get too close to those trees and to turn in before you're kicking the tops of them. There's also the field just immediately to the north, which I've mentioned already, which is a good alternative landing zone if there's not enough space or you think that it's just looking too congested. Remember always, of course, to give priority to the lower pilot when they're landing. Just try and be considerate about that, please. Fires. We do not permit open fires on Grasmere Sports Field. In particular, if you're in a tent or a camper van, these are very flammable things. So, if you could leave enough space between pitches of tents and camper vans and caravans that a fire in your tent would not hurt anyone else around you, I would really appreciate that. The most common cause of fires in tents is smoking. So think about that too. Smoking is permitted on the field, but only outside, and just try and be sensible. We do have an emergency evacuation plan in the event of a serious incident. I'm not going to go all through that now, but the race directors will make a decision if this is necessary, and you must follow their lead, please. So in the event of an evacuation of the field, we will announce this on the PA system and on the Telegram group, hence why it's very important that you're all on the Telegram group. It's very unlikely to happen, but we do have a process in place in case it does happen. There is a site medic who will be appointed as our emergency response lead, if you like. And again, if they ask for your help, I would really appreciate it if you would help them. Details of that will be in the written. Please do not play any loud music or excessive noise, especially after 9 o'clock at night. Grasmere is a residential village. There's lots of people who live here, families trying to put their children to sleep and so on. Please be respectful of this. Generally, the paragliders are really well liked in the valley. We have good relations with the landowners. Grasmere Sports, in particular, is now dedicated to supporting Cumbria Soaring Club all year round as a permanent landing zone, a safe landing zone for us. Paragliding is now included in the Grasmere Sports programme as an official part of their event, for example. And so we have good relationships here, but not everyone is excited to listen to your music late at night, okay? So if you could kind of keep relations with our neighbours positive, I would be very grateful for that. The prize giving is on the Saturday night, so the event starts on the Thursday. You can arrive on the Wednesday. The field is open from the Wednesday, but the event starts formally on the Thursday at registration on Thursday evening. That registration is mandatory. You must be there for the event registration on the Thursday. And then there's flying on the Thursday if you wish, and then Friday and Saturday are the competition days. and the prize giving is on the Saturday night in the main pavilion. There are a lot of different prizes to aim at, as well as the serious stuff. There's some fun prizes and things, and also the raffle. Thanks to our sponsors, especially Ozone, for all their support with prizes and so forth. That's really appreciated. It really helps us to run the event and to make it into something memorable. So that's it. That's my general brief on the Grasmere Valley and the Grasmere Sports Field in particular. If you have any questions, please get in contact with me. My mobile number is somewhere on the written briefing. I put it on the bottom of every email that I send. If you do have any doubts or questions or whatever, just telephone me or send me a text message. I'll be happy to hear from you. And join the Telegram group. If you still have got to the end of this video and you still haven't joined the Telegram group, go and join the Telegram group. That's it. Thanks very much. I'll see you in June.